Would you call the roll, please?
Peter Talbot.
Here.
Don Walsh.
Here.
David Belver.
Here.
John Malone.
Here.
Fiona Pearson.
Here.
Tricia Kramer. Here. Greg Wolf.
Here.
Tina Allard.
Here.
And Jim James.
Here.
Everyone's present.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's occurring to me that public hearing, I don't believe I have that, but
Separate agenda. Separate agenda.
that's okay. I can probably do it from memory at this point, so would you read the legal notice, please? Thanks, Arnett.
Council public hearing to consider a new section 16-6, fats, oil, and grease, fog, management ordinance has been scheduled for 7 p.m. on Tuesday, September 10th, 2024, in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 84 South Main Street, Cheshire, Connecticut. The proposed ordinance is as follows. Electors and citizens will be heard at the public hearing concerning this proposed ordinance dated at Cheshire, Connecticut, this 14th day of August, 2024.
Sean, for presentation of the hearing subject, did you want?
Yeah, I think either Merrick or Dave could just give a brief summary of the intent of the ordinance and what it's going to go into effect. So,
Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you.
So the intent is to basically just oversee all of the food service establishments in the town of Cheshire to make sure they're upholding their permit for the discharge of fats, oils, and greases into the town of Cheshire's sewer system. In previous years, I don't believe the health department was checking that. So this is just so we have some teeth in the game to make sure that all the restaurants are doing what they're supposed to do and not flushing it down the drain and into our sewer system, because it causes costly backups, damages to pumps at pump stations, and could cause sanitary sewer overflows. So it's really just to protect the infrastructure. That's the intent.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on the topic? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And we'll get into our regular meeting agenda. The approval of minutes from the August 13th and August 27th meetings. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. And a second?
Second.
Mr. Jinks, thank you. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. For public communication, anyone that would like to address the council on any topics can do so at this point. Just please give your name and address.
Tom Bartley, 60 Brigadoon Drive, Cheshire, Connecticut.
Thank you.
Good evening. On 11/14, I want to talk a little bit about Chesprocott Health District. It's been almost a year since the decision was made to stay with Chesprocott, and I just wanted to see if we could have some touch points as to where we are. So on 11/14, Town Council decided to stay with Chesprocott, expressing confidence in the leadership team and also expressing confidence in the ability to be able to identify and basically upgrade any performance or operational issues that were identified during the hearings. To that end, on 12/12 and on 11/14, it was proposed a memorandum of understanding, basically a report card for Chesprocott. It was an excellent idea. The draft MOU was submitted on 12/12. So I haven't heard very much since 12/12 regarding the MOU, regarding the hearings that was supposed to have been scheduled during the year, giving us consistent updates as to the operational effectiveness and leadership of Chesprocott. And I'm wondering if the MOU has been signed by all the parties involved, including the other towns and also Chesprocott Health District. I guess that's question number one. Question number two, if it has been signed, has it been implemented? And question number three, if it's been implemented, why have we not heard how well they're doing? I have some additional comments, but those are fair questions? Can I start there? Or do I need to sit down? You're going.
No, that's fine. The answers will be relatively quick. So, somewhere around the May timeframe, the director of the Chesprocott Health District resigned from that position. So that's basically the answer to one. The towns have signed off on the MOU. There is agreement on the town side. Chesprocott's board of directors decided to wait until the new director was in place prior to the MOU so that that person was aware of what the MOU entailed. So the answer to number two, I believe, was, has it been signed off by Chesprocott? No. And has it been implemented? The answer is no again. They are in the process of a search committee and in the hiring process. I am told that according to the timeline from the board, that a new director will be in place by the end of October.
Okay, so will the MOU be available for public scrutiny? This is a public document that can be published either on the town website or something like that, so any citizen can see what the accountabilities are that had been drafted by the town attorney and agreed upon by all the parties.
When it's signed by all parties, it's a public document.
It will be. So the answer is yes. Okay, thank you. Can you give me some sense as to expectations from the town council? It's been close to a year. When does the town council intend to implement the actual controls that we talked about last year? We are waiting for that hiring process, which can be open-ended. So to what degree are we not inviting the current leadership, the supplemental leadership or the current leadership of Chesprocott to actually have at least informal conversations with the town council, if not according to the formalities of the MOU, and or at least inviting the board up to talk about their observations as to how things have been going relative to staffing, leasing changes, upgrades to new facilities and things along those lines. The reason I'm asking is because there's been a significant amount of activity regarding staffing levels, people moving on to other jobs and so on and so forth in a year of where we were looking to implement controls and expressing confidence in that leadership team. This has been a year of difficult transition, but it seems like there's been little oversight or public oversight. So I'm just asking the town council is if at what point during this hiring process, 6 months, 8 months, 4 months down the line, if they don't hire somebody as a new leader, at what point does the town council then engage and exercise some of the oversight that we were trying to embody with the MOU?
So, difficult question to answer, but I would say if we get to the current timeline that I was presented by the board of directors, and we got 1, 2, 3 months past that, I think it would be necessary for all 3 towns to become a lot more involved.
So we have no specific time frame that you guys have laid out for yourselves in terms of asking the kinds of questions that you were concerned about a year ago.
Those questions have already been asked, and the timeline presented is that a new director will be hired by the end of October.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Jim McKenney, 272 Beacon Hill Drive, Cheshire. I'm here to address the council on a issue of concern. Several weeks ago, maybe 3, we had a very bad rainstorm. I was approached by a friend of mine because his mother-in-law's yard was flooded with water coming from the street. I notified one of the council members, Mrs. Allard, of the situation, but saying, let me handle it. I want to work through the system the right way. Mr. Rogers, who's here with me tonight, it's his mother-in-law, Agnes White, which some of you may or may not know, who lives over on Notch. At one point, not currently, but years back, I'm told they repaved the road, but they didn't redo the bump at the beginning to keep the water out of the driveway. And at one point, Mr. Rogers was told, well, since he didn't own the property, he didn't have a right to have input. So anyway, as I'm pursuing this for the last 2 weeks, and I finally threw my hands up and gave up last Friday, I've been talking to the town engineer, trying to get him to understand the situation. Please, open a fire hydrant. We can't do that. Send over the fire department to run the water. Can't do that. It can't happen. The water can't jump that little curb. Yeah, it can. No, it can't happen. It's got to be coming from the yard. In addition, Mr. Rogers stood there during that storm with a neighbor watching the water come over. I finally, after giving up on Friday, I put 250 gallons of water on the back of my utility trailer, drove it over there, released it, and watched it go into the yard. There's red food coloring and a little green food coloring. I have shown one staff member in here tonight. I've been unable to get to show it to Arnett or the transfer, but we do have the documents. We will be happy to go over them. And I'm asking for your help in resolving this problem. But to say it can't happen, I've got proof that it can happen, and I did make it happen. No pumps were used. All I did was turn a valve on a tank of water that was on the end of my utility trailer and let a pipe take it off the trailer and onto the road. I'd be happy to introduce Mr. Rogers, who will tell you the things that he knows, and then I'll answer questions. I'll take questions now if you have them of me, or if you want to wait till Mr. Rogers speaks, however you prefer. But the situation is a very bad one. The garage was flooded. The driveway was flooded. He even has a drain, and it flooded the garage. It was coming off the road, according to Mr. Rogers and his neighbor. I had asked that they check with the neighbors. I don't believe they did. I had asked that when you send somebody out, notify me and I'll go with them because I want to be able to have a dialogue. I was never notified.
So, Mr. McKenney, here's what I will say, is that I have seen numerous correspondence between the town manager, the assistant town manager, the public works director, the town engineer. So there is an ongoing dialogue. I know that some of it involves you. I know some of it involves Mr. Rogers. So I'm confident that this will be resolved.
To the best, I believe, and I could be wrong, but Mr. Rogers will correct. I think he got a letter saying it wasn't going to be addressed. But I was also told, about getting the release of the water. No, we'll have to wait for the next heavy rain. So what if the next heavy rain's on Saturday or Sunday or after 4:30? How hard is it to dump water? If you need me to do it for you, and with the engineer or whoever you want to send over, I'll be happy to fill that 250-gallon tank again with tap water.
Look, I'm not an engineer, But
Nor am I, but I can tell you.
what I would say is it's very difficult to dump water in the street and try to recreate what a 2-inch in 1 hour rainstorm will do with surrounding properties, the road, and all of the identical conditions that are caused by those unique rainstorms. So,
And yet, I did it twice in 5 minutes.
was there water coming from the adjacent properties as well?
Doesn't matter. It jumped the street into the driveway.
All right.
What would water coming from adjacent properties have to do with you keeping town water off of a person's yard?
Well, and you say repaving. It was chip sealing that was done to that surface, which added it didn't add what paving adds to the height of a roadway.
I wasn't there, Mr. Rogers. You can talk those with Mr. Rogers. But again, I've got 250-gallon tank. Be happy to recreate that again. We will get you the photos for you to see. There was no trick. We didn't use a pump or something, to make. We just turned the valve, let it hit the street, and go. And you'll see that in the video that you will get.
Okay. All right, again.
Any other question before, or, okay. May he speak?
Sure.
Hi, my name is Dan Rogers, and I'm the son-in-law of Agnes White on 1000 Road in Cheshire.
Would you give me your address, please, sir?
My
for the record?
address is 20 Plank Road, Prospect, Connecticut.
Thank you.
The road had been milled, if I'm saying that correctly. It was milled at one time, then repaved. What they did was they made it level when they milled it. After they milled it, then they paved it. They made it level with the street, and the water runs over. So there is no lip.
There's a tiny one.
Yeah, but is so small. It can't be. It's not sufficient. So it needs to be. I asked that. Can we address that and stop the water from coming into my mother-in-law's garage? This is the third time, and she's lost a lot of things in there. Nothing. Can we address this? It needs.
I would be very happy to convene a meeting with Mr. McKenney, with yourself, myself, and town staff, and we'll get in a room and we'll talk this through.
And yes, I did receive something from someone saying that it's fined. Someone, I think it was, I can tell you right offhand. I have a name here. Is it Daniel Bombara?
Dan Barbero, yes.
It states that the private drain is the evaluation was determined and is functioning properly.
Have you just, and I don't want to belabor this, I'd rather do it in a meeting where we can all be in the room together. Has the drain that's on your mother-in-law's property, has that drain been checked to make sure it's working?
I don't know how to answer that. I just know it's been there. It's
Okay.
yeah. It's been there. I don't know.
pumped water, it hit the drain, it didn't back up.
Oh, that's what. Okay, that's what he means. Yes.
It's not going anywhere other out into
To
a
the
dry
dry-
well and settle.
In the
It's not
center of the
meant to
field.
drain the street water.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
I want to get
Situation.
people that are familiar with this and know a lot more about this than I do, so if you will accept that, we'll convene a meeting and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good evening. Jeff
evening.
Falk, 560 Mixville Road. I'm not here to complain. I'm here to say thank you. We held our first Veterans Advisory Committee meeting last Thursday, And as a result of that, whether it was wanted or not, my father was elected chairman of the committee. So I got enough on my plate. But no, it went well. Like I said, many thanks to all of you for making this happen. And in ordinance committee, Miss Allard, Mr. Jenks, Mr. Veliber, and Miss Allard had a nice heartfelt speech the other night at the meeting. And it's nice. Everybody's excited for it. We just had our VFW meeting, and what I get is everybody likes that there's an avenue with the town for correspondence, and it goes both ways. So, as somebody once said, I'm going to look forward to some more meaningful conversation with you all. But thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. We look forward to your work and for continued reports, I hope.
From my father, not me.
Anyone else like to? Yes.
My name is Susan Naramore, and I live at 555 Wood Pond Road. I realize the council is in negotiations with the police department, and I'd like you to know how much we value our resource officers, Oscar Rivera at Dodd and Mike Kahn at Cheshire High School. In the uneasy climate at many schools around the country, we have felt more than safe. These officers do their jobs well. They are interested, attentive, smart, approachable, and very visible, which many of us feel is so very important. Officer Kahn is outside when the buses arrive in the morning and outside when they leave in the afternoon. He is seen all day long. I can't imagine these officers not being at our schools, seeing to our well-being and safety. They are serious about what they have been trained to do. The first time I spoke with Officer Kahn, he said when he is at school, our kids are his kids. Our students are a precious commodity and deserve to have Officers Rivera and Kahn on the job to keep them safe. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and we couldn't agree with you more. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to our regular agenda. We have already approved the minutes, the consent calendar. Mr. Jenks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 091024-1, consent calendar for September 10th, 2024. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves the consent calendar for September 10th, 2024 as follows. There are two very generous donations there to the Human Services gift account, one to the Youth Services gift account, and also a tax refund amount.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Veliber. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to old business. Item 7A is the Bartlam Park South update. Mr. Kimball, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just reference the first page of the town manager's report tonight with 4 updated pictures there. The project is continuing to go well. Most of the construction is nearing completion. In the next few weeks will include final topsoiling and landscaping. Scoreboard footings were being installed earlier this week. Paving is completed with the exception of the final course around the to-be-completed bandshell area. The contractor's electrical work was completed last week and town inspectors signed off. So now it's in the hands of Eversource. Eversource is currently working on installing the meters and terminations. And once complete, an Eversource line crew will then begin working to install the transformer and pull wires, which will then complete the electrical service. So tentatively, that's in the next couple of weeks. Bandshell design is still ongoing and nearing completion. Dorita and Weston & Sampson are awaiting additional load calculations that Polygon did not initially include before the fabrication. The design can be complete and the fabrication can begin. Once that arrives, it will still be 10 to 12 weeks for fabrication to be complete. So at this point, that's putting us into December, well into December for installation, unless something goes quicker. Dorita is planning to proceed with the foundation construction, again, once the design is finalized, but again, the earliest we anticipate the bandshell being there will be December. So good news, though, is the rest of the park is nearing completion. The tentative plan is for substantial completion and acceptance of the park, again, with the exception of the bandshell, which could be early October or mid-October, which would then open up the rest of the facility and the parking for public access. So that part is very good news. Obviously, the band shell remains a little bit of a frustration, but we're optimistic and excited to get the park open for folks to start to enjoy.
Questions? Mr. Veliber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sean, thank you also for getting back to me. I'd emailed you earlier about the opening, because I know that at least I am starting to get questions from residents going, when can we start using this, especially the walking path? And so thank you for getting back to me, because I know this is going to be, I mean, if the milling path that we put in is any indication of how I think this is going to be even more successful. So I know a lot of residents are looking forward to having that kind of walking path there. As we all know, it's the nice thing about that path was that, unlike the linear trail, you're not competing with e-bikes and bikers and runners and everything else. It's just a nice, quiet place to be. So thank you for getting back to me on that. And hopefully, as I said, early October will be a great opening day. My question was, I'm seeing a lot of questions, and I've also gotten questions, and I know we've talked about this, but I wanted to figure out what's the current status of bleachers or at the turf fields? Because people are saying, we built this field, when do we get to sit around it? How are we going to sit around it? That type of thing. I know we had trouble, obviously, we can't really put it on the turf field itself, but if you just could give a little update as to what the plan is for people to be able to watch games and stuff at that field.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think part of what's happening now, as we have, obviously even since the spring with lacrosse pushed to open up the turf field earlier than the entire project was completed, which was obviously a good thing. What happens now is spectators can only be on two sides of that very large four-sided, basically square field. So inevitably, particularly with football right now, I've heard from some parents who are like, I want to watch my kid. They're on the far side of the field. They're particularly far away. Just to be clear, I think we've talked about this before, but the field was intended to replace the practice area. It was never intended to be a full, certainly not a replacement to the football field at the high school or a true, grandstand style spectator facility. That said, we do have a pad, a couple areas where either tip and roll or possibly trailer pulled bleachers can be put on really 3 of the 4 sides, potentially. Certainly the north and the south are the best areas with the best sort of designed areas that you can have bleachers. So they're part of the project. They're part of our plans to purchase now that we're kind of honing in on the final budget, and contingencies are all but wrapped up, with the exception of the band shell, as I just talked about. But yes, we will have bleachers. But I think also once spectators are able to be on all 4 sides of the facility, it will mitigate some of those concerns, because it is far. If your kid's on the other side from the pool lot, say, it's pretty far to watch. But if you were there to watch practice or a scrimmage from the new parking lot side, you're obviously much closer, and there's ample space on the sidewalk to bring camping chairs or any other options you have. But we are intending to have some bleacher options, particularly on the north and the south side.
Right, but they're not going to be the big full-scale bleachers like you would see at the Cheshire High School.
No.
It's going to be more
Yeah.
of your 6, 7, 8 row type bleachers, not the big
Correct.
thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
But the plan is to have them on all 4 sides?
I mean,
Or at least
I would
3
say
out
at
of
least
4.
the 2 of the 4, the north and the south, are most conducive to it. There is some topography challenges on the that would be the east side, where the way the slope's away. You'd have to do some modifications to put any there. And the other side, I don't think is appropriate where the parking lot is. There's just not enough space there on the west side. But it's certainly, it's well within our radar. And again, we do have plans to put some bleachers in. And again, I really do think once we have all 4 sides open up, it's going to be much easier to view activities on the turf field.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks, Sean, for putting this together. Couple questions. First, I'm sure people know the Fall Festival this weekend, but the parking lots and the bathrooms, the new bathrooms will be off limits because we have no power there. So I just want to make sure we remind the public
Yeah, they're
of
still
that.
within the construction site. It's unfortunately, we wish, in a perfect world, we would have been able to have them available. They just aren't, and it wouldn't be safe to have access to them without the site lighting and everything installed. And so we do encourage folks to keep that in mind for attending Fall Fest. We're So far, it looks like the weather's going to be really nice. But it's not a very far walk from the high school, and a lot of folks will be parking over there and coming.
And I believe they're going to have some golf carts or something to shuttle some of the
That's
people.
what I was told. Yeah.
The other thing, we continue to call it Bartlam Park South, and I know that we had talked in the past about naming rights of certain sections of that. When will we be discussing that, and is that something that we should be considering soon, since it's almost ready to be open?
Absolutely. Let me get back to you to confirm. Yes, the proposal was to name the Picnic Grove area, sort of green Picnic Grove, town green area. As per the contract that the town entered into to purchase the 10 acres, there is a requirement to name either the entire park or a portion of the park after Catherine Willits Chapman. And so the recommendation is for that Picnic Grove to be the Catherine Willits Chapman Picnic Grove. But I would like to take that as a formal action, of course, ultimately to the town council. And I think really the time is now. It's timely to bring it forward, probably at one of our next meetings, if we can have that discussion and then start to implement signage and whatnot going forward too.
Just
Yeah, Mr.
clarification, to what you answered to Councilman Wash. So the existing bathrooms are also not going to be open, like the older or they are open. Just
Those will
just
be
the new ones are closed, but so I that's what I wanted to clarify, because I thought you were saying that maybe people had to go back to the high school to use the bathroom.
Oh, no, I meant, sorry, not for the bathrooms. I was talking about parking.
Parking, okay.
Right, parking will be at the high school side. For the most part, again, some vendors and whatnot will be parking on the Bartlam Park side. But no, the bathrooms are fully open, and there are additional porta potties and other things around, as there always are for the.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Brings us to Mr. Gussenberg for an update on the school building committee.
Good evening.
Good evening.
No videos today, so. North End plans are complete. They consist of 464 pages of detailed drawings and 4,556 pages of specs and project manuals. Cost estimates have been reconciled, and the present plans are within budget. The joint Board of Ed and Next Generation School Building Committee meeting is scheduled for this coming Thursday to approve the plans. They'll then be sent up to the state. If all goes well, we'll get the state approval and be going out to bid in October. The Norton plans are being reviewed and cost estimates are being completed. In the past, the Norton budget has been a tighter one, so we're anxiously awaiting these cost estimates. The joint Board of Ed and Next Generation School Building Committee meeting scheduled for September 26th to approve the Norton plans. Both the North End School and Norton School had additional square footage above the state guidelines brought about by our need for additional special ed facilities. With this in mind, we applied for a space waiver so that we could receive reimbursement on this additional square footage, but the state rejected our request. The town cannot begin to receive reimbursement money from the state until this issue is resolved, so the Next Generation School Building Committee determined that we should not appeal the state's decision. However, we are recommending that the town council work with our state legislators to pass special legislation next spring providing the additional money. FYI, the North End School is approximately 6,000 square feet over the state standard. The Norton School, approximately 2,100 square feet above the standard. And that is due to special ed programming. On a similar note, the state this past session passed legislation providing additional reimbursement for the construction of new facilities for pre-K programs. As you know, we're building substantial new pre-K facilities at the North End School. However, unfortunately, we are not eligible since our North End project has already been approved by the state. Again, we're suggesting the council work with our legislators to pass special legislation making this new money retroactive for our program. Phase 1 construction is largely complete at the Norton site. We await the arrival of the culvert and will then put some finishing touches on the access from Sharon Drive. The playground area in front is complete and the emergency access drive in back is paved. Phase 1 construction at the north end site is ongoing. Fencing is complete around the entire site. Topsoil has been moved and the compacting of soil is ongoing. At both sites, we have been carefully monitoring erosion control after the large rain events that we had encountered lately. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Gussenberg. Before I turn it over to my colleagues, I'm sure you're going to want to stay around for item D on our agenda tonight,
I saw
which
that
is
on
our legislative agenda, where we have included one of the two, but we can certainly talk about the other one and adding that one because I think they're absolutely appropriate. My quick question is, the timeline that you laid out, is that within the timeline that you were anticipating?
We're right on schedule right now.
Perfect.
And that has us going out to bid in both projects during October, with construction starting mid to late December, early January in the two projects. The Norton project, we're running a couple of weeks behind the north end. That's by design. We can't do them all at once. But right now, we're right on schedule. We do review those schedules every other week with a detailed schedule review the first meeting of every month, which is coming up this Thursday. And so far, we've been able to stay right on.
Thank you. Colleagues, Mr. Walsh.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate that. The additional square footage that you said you need for special ed, the 6,000 and I think you said 4,000?
2,000.
2,000. In terms of dollars, if we don't get the 50% or whatever, what's the additional cost to this project, to the projects?
Yeah, I don't have a dollar figure for you. Basically, what they have to do is go through and determine, and that actually is being done right now by our cost estimators, to go through all the items that are presently would not be eligible for reimbursement, and then to split that off from the rest of the project, and then to do a calculation of the two. So anything, for instance, that's off-site, sidewalks that are not on our property, things like that would not be reimbursable. So there's certain things that we don't get reimbursed by the state, and then 50% of everything else. So, what technically would be that 2,000 square foot at Norton, 6,000 square foot at the north end, we would get 50% reimbursement for building those facilities. I don't have a dollar figure.
Is this 6,000 square feet? Sounds like a lot. And I don't know how much per square foot this project is costing us, but either way, we have to move forward with it, correct? It's just either going to cost us more money or we can get some reambrsment from the state. Is that what you're saying? Because you can't build these schools without that additional 6,000 or 2,000, correct?
No, the issue in the two different schools, Norton School, we had to add 2 additional classrooms onto the original design due to the need for more special needs programming. The North End School has always been different due to the movement of the pre-K program there from Darcy. And the state essentially looks and says, all right, we will look at your enrollment, and based on your enrollment, we give you X square footage. That Darcy program is a very unique and special one. And if you've gone through Darcy School, you can see that it's not your typical classroom where you've got 18 students sitting at desks. It requires much more square footage. So the architects started off by spending a fair amount of time at Darcy School with the staff, going through the classrooms, talking to all the staff about their program and trying to replicate that program as much as they could in the new North End School. That takes more square footage than what the state normally would allow.
But did we know about that, like, going into it, or is this something that we just found out that we needed this extra square footage?
Well, we've been monitoring the square footage all along. As you're doing the design work, you know, the square footages go up and down. But we've always known that the preschool program was going to take more square footage than what the state was going to allow. We were very hopeful that we would get a space waiver. We felt that we had a very good case based on the fact that these were special needs programs, very unique and special one at Darcy in particular that's won awards. And we felt that going to the state that, you know, they would say these clearly are needed spaces. They did not agree.
Yep, no, I understand. So, yeah, I definitely would make sure that we reach out to our state legislators and make sure that gets put on there, because I have a feeling it could be a lot of money for us if we don't do this.
Yeah, it doesn't affect our construction budget. It affects the reimbursement money that the state would give to the town.
Right.
So, you know, we have done some other things with, you know, our electric rates and some things like that, that you're going to be hopefully seeing some reimbursement coming from some other programs. But we started off by saying we could get up to 50% reimbursement on the total 166 million that we're bonding. And this will reduce that somewhat.
All right, thank you.
Could I just add to that briefly? Sorry, Mr. Chairman. That the only other thing it does affect is the timing of those the first progress payment. But I have confirmed with Jim Jascott that we're okay from a budgeting standpoint and waiting to get this resolved, which we fully support, to maximize our reimbursement rate. Even if it means we have to wait until May or June to get that first progress payment processed, we're okay from a budgetary standpoint with our projections on the budget.
Ms. Pearson and then Mr. Malone.
Say, as someone who had a daughter go through that Darcy pre-K program and know how valuable it is in our community, and so I'm glad to hear that we're going to be maintaining that, and I'm sure our legislators, I'm hoping our legislators will work with us to ensure that we can receive the reimbursement, because it is a very special program in our community. So,
Which I think the state has recognized with this last law that they passed last summer, which now gives added reimbursement for pre-K construction. Unfortunately, our project was already in the hopper at that point, so we're technically not eligible for it. But I think we have a very strong case,
No,
since
absolutely.
we hadn't even begun to break ground or even had the plans approved yet. So we're hopeful that the state legislature could pass some extra legislation on that.
Mr. Malone.
Thank you, Peter. So I just want to understand something. I think I understand it, but I want to make sure. When you say there's a reduction in the percentage of reimbursement, that only is based upon the fact that this additional square footage might have no reimbursement. But it doesn't affect our 50% on the rest of the project, does it?
No, we get 50% on all reimbursable costs.
Okay.
So what we have to do is to break out, as I said, they're working on this now, break out in the project all of the things that would not be reimbursable, and then we'll get 50% on everything else. So.
And this may not be reimbursable if we don't.
And at the moment, this is not reimbursable space. So, you know, what it will do in the end, you'll say, okay, based on the total cost of the project, you won't end up at 50%. We were never going to be at 50%. It would be at some smaller amount because some items will not make the reimbursable.
But just for 100% clarification, by going over the square footage, it doesn't jeopardize the 50% reimbursement for what's under this, which
No.
meets the square footage.
Not at all.
Mr. Jinks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first of all, thank you very much again to you and your committee. You guys have had to meet several deadlines along the way, and we're a long way to go, but it's great to hear that that you're at this point and still very much on schedule. As far as the Inflation Reduction Act grant that was discussed a while back, the energy efficiency, I don't know what's being called exactly, but is there anything to relay to us at this point as far as the status of that, or is it too early to say?
I haven't been closely involved with that at this point. The town council did recently approve a contract. That data has been given and calculations are being done, but beyond that, I don't have any information. I was initially told by, I forget the name of the firm. Sean, do you recall offhand?
For CLA?
Yeah, CLA. I was initially told by CLA that it could be up to $3 million that we would get through the Inflation Reduction Act. And that's due to our geothermal system and some of the other things that we're doing there. Eversource, we also have a grant from, and it looks like there we'll be getting about $500,000 per building, again, due to the geothermal system. Most of that is done after the fact. You have to get all of these systems up and running and then prove that they are as efficient as we claim before they release that money.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it, Mr. Gussenberg. Please, and pass along again. It's going to be a monthly thing, but please pass along our gratitude to the committee.
I told the committee that pretty much every month. But
Good.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to new business. Item 8A is the ratification of an off-the-record settlement agreement for the Public Works Local 1303-202 of Council 4 AFSCME AFL-CIO for the 24-25 fiscal year budget. Ms. Pearson.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 091024-2. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves the off-the-record settlement agreement between the Town of Cheshire and the Public Works Union Local 1303-202 of Council 4, AFSCME AFL-CIO for the term July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025 as presented.
We have a motion. Mr. Velaber with a second. Thank you, sir. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item B, which is the ratification of an off-the-record settlement agreement for the Town Hall Local 1303-374 of Council 4 AFSCME AFL-CIO for the 24-25 fiscal year budget. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 091024-3. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves the off-the-record settlement agreement between the Town of Cheshire and the Town Hall Union, Local 1303-374 of Council 4, AFSCME AFL-CIO for the term July 1, 2024 to June 30th, 2025 as presented.
We have a motion. Thank you, Mr. Walsh, for the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Item C is the ratification of a tentative agreement for the Cheshire Police Department dispatchers, UPS EU Local 424, Unit 101. Ms. Allard.
I motion to table item C on the agenda.
We have a motion and a second to table from Ms. Allard and Mr. Jinks. All those in favor? The table passes unanimously. That item will be tabled from our agenda. Which brings us to item number D, which is the legislative requests for the 2025 session. The first of which is an issue that Mr. Gussenberg just brought to us, and it's already been on our mind as well. So, Mr. Kimball, if you would walk us through the couple items, and then we can open it up to my colleagues for discussion.
Sure. So before you is a draft recommendation memo. This is sort of the beginning of our historic process of establishing agreed-upon legislative recommendations for the upcoming 2025 state session. This year, it's what they refer to as a long session. It starts in January, this case January 8th, and adjourns June, as opposed to the February, May shorter sessions in alternating years. So we would like to get this to our legislative delegation. Often in order to draft bills, they like to see it often a month in advance if possible. I think the December timeframe historically. Some years, not every year, we've invited them in for discussion. We can talk more about whether that's something you'd like to do this year. As Mr. Gussenberg said, and as the chairman just referenced, I had in my initial draft I put together last week, put the notwithstanding legislation for the space standard waiver as an item. The second one on the early education reimbursement rates, I would strongly recommend we also add there, probably right after in those two Cheshire specific requests. Again, that would make us eligible for the increased or bonus reimbursement rate percentages on early education, which is for prospective school projects, and we feel strongly ours should be included in that. So those would be my two initial recommended requests. And then you'll see two general legislative, one's new, one is old, that we've asked for many years going. I'll start with the first, which actually touches on item E, which will be our next item tonight, which is establishing our municipal bid limits. There's currently there's a state statute cap on municipal bid limits at $25,000. That's why tonight we have to establish new bid limits at a set amount of $25,000. Before we had gone to $20,000, $40,000 for construction. So we need to amend that. But it hasn't been adjusted in about 12 years. So especially with the cost of inflation, especially the cost of rising construction costs, we would advocate that the state amend the cap on municipal bid limits to at least $40,000, if not maybe $50,000, or maybe $40,000 with an annual index for inflation or something that this doesn't have to be revisited. It looks like back in 2011, they increased it from, I think it was $7,500. It hadn't been touched in a long time, and to the current $25,000. So it seems like the kind of thing that just doesn't get maybe amended every 10 to 15 years or something. So if at all possible to index for inflation, sometimes hedges against that kind of getting lost. So that would be our request, that we increase that cap. And then finally, and I know folks have seen this one on for many years, but prevailing wage is an item the town has historically asked successfully, along with other municipalities, lobbied for an increase to the prevailing wage threshold for new construction to $400,000, from $400,000 to $1 million. But that's good for new construction. Of course, there's not a lot of new construction. Even that number is starting to seem smaller and smaller as inflation's gone up. But the threshold for prevailing wage for renovation projects has remained at $100,000, which is really it's smaller than our minimum for capital project requests, and really there's not a lot of substantial renovation projects that are going to cost you less than $100,000 in most municipal facilities, unfortunately. So it just adds a significant cost to these projects in our experience, and we certainly understand some of the pressures around prevailing wage and varying opinions on it, but I think trying to find a medium that is increased over where it has been for a very long time at $100,000, I think is at least a reasonable conversation. So those are my suggested. This is really a process that we start on tonight. Up to you, Mr. Chairman, we can have discussion tonight. If there's any others topics that folks would like to see us add, we could discuss that now. We could come back in the October meeting, which is only a few weeks really away anyway. But we would like to kind of wrap it up by November, December timeframe to get it to our legislative delegation in a timely fashion. So I'll stop there.
So we'll start with the items that are listed. Questions or comments about the items that we have? Is the council's preference then to discuss, does anyone have additional items, or do we want to do this through emailing recommendations to Sean that can be added, and then he will send us a final document prior to sending it on to our legislative delegation? Mr. Walsh.
I think that's a good idea to do the email. And one of the things, having done this for the past 5 years with our state legislators, and then a lot of the things that we've always asked for never seem to have we've gotten. But I would like to get reports back, ask them to please report back to us as it goes along, and if there's anything that they need from us that we can help them get to this point, because I think this prevailing wage is way too low, and having, when they moved up the other one to $1 million and renovations at $100,000, I don't think you can fix your garage for $100,000 these days. And, I mean, I think it's something that we really need to push them for a little bit more. In the past, it seemed to be when we had the legislators here, it just became a political fight back and forth. And you know what? This is for the good of the town, and I'd rather just have them work together to help us out with some of these things. So I would prefer them, trying to work for us and get some of these things pushed through. But I think it's a good idea to let us think about what else we might want to add in there and give them a list of stuff and see what we can get.
Mr. Walsh, I agree that I think we're best served by sending this to them prior to the start of the legislative session. And then the problem is once they start session, it's like us when we're in budgets. The last thing we want to do is add more meetings, so I don't want to be calling them in at that point. But I think there is a mechanism that we can figure out to maintain that communication, because I agree with you that we'd like to be kept updated on what legislation is out there, especially if it's some of the items that are on this list. So I think, Sean, what we'll do is if you would just send a general email out to the council and solicit recommendations. Put a deadline that gives you time to put it together, circulate it around as a final document, and then have it to the legislature, first of the year.
Mr. Chairman, so will, anything we might want to add, we want to get to Sean so we can all look at that by the October meeting? Is that what we're doing? Right?
Well, I think the time frame, we do still have some time.
Right.
So I think if we give it a good 6 weeks to allow for some exchange of ideas and give Sean time to put together a final document that then we can take a look at before it gets sent to the legislatures for the first of the year.
Right. I think we want to have it to them by early November, though, right? Probably whatever we're doing. I think they start to kind of look at their agenda in November.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depending on how many we receive. I mean, certainly it's wouldn't be hard, I don't think, depending on how many we collect, to have at least a draft for the October 8th meeting, and then if we're ready to approve it that night, great. If we need a little more time,
Right.
the November, would that be 12th meeting? I think.
I think what I was saying is
adopting.
let's all try and have it to you for the
Earlier.
October meeting, so
Clear
we can
of the
finalize
October.
it in
I'm good with that.
October and
Yeah,
then
that's
move
great.
forward with, is what I was saying, yeah.
And I think, go ahead, Ms. Kramer. I don't want to anticipate what you're going to say.
I dare you to guess. So with regards to getting ideas for bills in legislature to people in the General Assembly, the earlier the better. You also want to shop around to see what committees would best be suited for the type of legislature that you're trying to put forward. So if it has to do with children or funding, you want to make sure that you find somebody in that committee that is looking to put their name on a bill and wants to push that forward. And once you have the advocacy of specific legislators, you want to get the names of their LAs, of their constituent engagement coordinators, and you can correspond with them directly throughout the entire session and get immediate feedback on where that bill's sitting, what phase it's in, is it getting picked up? You can get a feeling for who's voting on it in the committee, if it's going through. So there's specific people that you can keep in touch with depending on what legislation you're trying to see pass through the session.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Veliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just, I'm searching back in my memory. I think these four things are great. I think obviously the two new ones are very important for us, especially for this project. And I think the two recurring ones are important. Hopefully we'll get a little more traction, although it seems like we keep putting them up and they don't get a lot of stick. But Sean, one question. We had a discussion, I think last year, about the possibility, and I don't know whether this is legislative or more administrative, but having a bus route in the north end, bus route coming up and going into the north end there and the industrial park. And I guess my question, I think we may have put that in our legislative agenda, or maybe we just talked about it as part of the legislative agenda. I can't remember. But I was just curious. Obviously, it didn't seem to go anywhere, but I was just curious if that was something. Was there a reason it died? Is there any hope of that? And is that something maybe we want to discuss again? Because I think there were some employers up there in the industrial park who really would like to see that a bus route be available to them.
Yes, and we did include it in our legislative recommendations, and it was actually sort of just to get the ball rolling on the conversation. And we were to the point you made there. It isn't so much a legislative fix as administrative CT Transit, and it did actually spark some good connections. And kudos to our delegation. A number of folks helped us kind of get in touch with some folks in terms of the process for that petition change. And actually, I know I don't have it at my fingertips now, but there were some positive developments along that in terms of the process and some potential adjustments to the bus route. I was just talking with Andrew Martelli about this a couple months ago. I can try to get a little more clarity around where that was moving, and I think we were making a little bit of progress towards an expansion of the bus route. So maybe hold off on that for at the moment. And again, probably not appropriate for legislative recommendations. We kind of learned through that process, but certainly was very helpful for getting feedback from our delegation on the best route to pursue. And I think there's a little more that I can share as soon as I get my hands on that additional information.
Well, thank you very much, because I think some of these potentially new developments, like Stonegate Crossing, and some hopefully whatever else may go in some of that north end, as we develop that north end gets developed, that may become even more important as that whole area could now be potentially serviced by the bus route coming off and looping through. So I'm sure some of these stores that may go into a Stonegate Crossing or something may also appreciate the opportunity for some of their potential employees to be able to utilize that facility or the bus route as well. So thank you very much. I just wanted to put that back out there and sort of just refresh my recollection and others, as well as the fact that was something that we're looking at and hopefully something we can effectuate or at least increase the coverage for that. Thank you.
Ms. Kramer.
A good date to have something move forward or to reach out to legislators would probably be after Election Day. November 6th would probably be a good target date to get information or ask questions.
Right, because there also may be changes in the delegation, so.
There might be different motivating factors between November and January after Election Day.
As a partial, Mr. Veliber, as a partial homage to James Earl Jones, we are building it in the north end, and hopefully the buses will come. So I think we're all set with that then, Sean. You can circulate something and we'll finalize something in October, maybe the November meeting at the latest post-election. Yes. Sure.
I just want to also express my support for the legislation regarding the space waiver for the schools. Unlike my colleagues with prevailing wage, I have differing opinions regarding the prevailing wage legislation proposal. Prevailing wage is a wage that's determined by federal and state entities determining fair wages for construction workers, folks who work in our communities, electricians, construction workers, and so prevailing wage protects those folks and ensures that they have a wage that will provide a livable income for them in their communities. And they're taxpayers, they communicate to our community taxes, they spend money in our communities. And so although I understand the difficulties with municipalities and trying to keep construction costs low, and we have an interest in keeping our costs low, we also want to make sure that folks in our community have a livable wage. So that is something that I have mixed feelings about, so just express that. As we communicate with our legislators, I'm sure we'll communicate more.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. Okay, moving on, we'll get to item E, the establishment of bid limits. Mr. Jinks.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 091024-5. Be it resolved that pursuant to Section 7-8C1 of the Town Charter, the Town Council amends the requirements for sealed bids to $25,000 for both construction and non-construction services per CGS 7-148V requirements effective immediately.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Veliber, thank you. Sean, it's my understanding that this is kind of cleanup language to conform with statute.
That's correct. Yeah, it came to our attention that there is this cap that we just referenced before at 25,000. Before we had increased it last time to 20,000 for non-construction and 40,000 for construction. So we'd like to amend that to be consistent with the statute at 25,000 and just make it a flat 25,000. So it's a slight increase on the non-construction bid limit, but then obviously reduction on the construction to 25, and certainly much more manageable and easier for town staff to operate under with a set single dollar amount.
Discussion from colleagues? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moves us to item F, the direction to the Public Building Commission on the prisoner cell project. And Ms. Kramer, please.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 091-024-6. Be it resolved that pursuant to the request from the Public Building Commission for further direction for the prisoner cell renovation project, the Town Council confirms that the scope of the project is reduced to 3 new cells and requests that the PBC determine if there are any other communities considering a similar project that would be willing to bid jointly with the Town of Cheshire.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. By way of discussion, the Public Building Commission at their last meeting requested some additional clarity from the Town Council, and we wanted to formalize that for that commission. Is there any questions regarding the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Brings us to item G, authorization to apply for Office of Brownfield Remediation and Development, OBRD, Round 20 Municipal Grant Program. Mr. Wolf.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 091024-7. Be it resolved that the Town Council authorizes an application to the Office of Brownfield Remediation and Development Municipal Grant Program, assessment only, Round 20, in an amount not to exceed $200,000, and accepts and appropriates said grant for the assessment and engineering to facilitate the dredging of the Farmington Canal starting at West Main Street and continuing south. And be it further resolved that the Town Council authorizes Town Manager Sean M. Kimball to execute any and all documents associated with the grant.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Do we have a second? Mr. Walsh, thank you. Discussion.
So we discussed this briefly at the Budget Committee before the meeting. This is an opportunity that came about with the latest round of Brownfield grant funding. It sort of also piggybacks on the discussion we had during the capital budget of approving some design money and initial assessment money for scoping out the West Main Street, Farmington Canal dredging project. This portion of the grant program allows for an assessment-only grant funding of up to $200,000, and working closely with Andrew Martelli, our Director of Economic Development and Grants. We feel confident that this project kind of checks all the boxes with the Brownfield program. We have been working with Fuss & O'Neill to perform some initial analytical testing in the canal to prepare for this grant process. And ultimately, we're seeking your approval to apply for $200,000, which is the maximum under the program, which could then fund analytical, engineering, design, bid document preparation, bidding assistance, and ultimately construction administration. And again, as you'll recall with this project, we need to really determine the scope, the extent of the dredging, the status of the culvert there just south of West Main, and any cleaning and remediation that needs to be done there as part of the overall project. But if we can get that all funded, and there's no match required, even though we do have a separate appropriation to kick off this project, if we can get this funding from the state to cover that, and then possibly seek the next round, which is in, I believe, January. If we have this information before then, we might be able to seek further funding of the actual dredging project itself under the Brownfield program also. So the deadline for this is September 29th. It kind of just came about relatively recently, so we would be looking for your approval to apply for that grant.
Questions? Mr. Velaber, halfway, half a question.
Okay, no, I wasn't sure. I saw John's hand go up. Just a quick question. With this, so this is just for the planning part of it, not for the cost of actually doing any of the work, but hopefully with the possibility of getting more money to do that work. I guess my question is, with the big storm that we had, a couple weeks ago, did that have an impact on Ball and Socket and properties around that? And is that something that we think that dredging potentially would have helped resolve some of that, or eliminated the problem, or maybe at least ameliorated maybe some of it?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to say it. There's no doubt that there's water infiltration from the canal that Ball and Socket's experienced over some of those major storms. You can just see visually that section of the canal has pretty, there's a lot of silt and sediment and things in there. So again, I think the first step is to confirm through some of the analytical testing that it also is in fact eligible under as a brownfield. So you have to make sure it has some of the contaminants and things that we fully expect it will in the testing of the canal. It's also important to know that that's state property. I think that actually gives us a leg up in this program, but the state actually owns the canal itself, so it's not our own property, but we think that helps as we're proposing a project on their property to remediate. But certainly it would help a lot with some of the flooding issues that we've experienced in that area if it was functioning and conveying water more effectively.
Thank you.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick question on this. This is the section right alongside Ball and Socket. The rest of the canal that goes through our town, in the future, have we inspected that? Will any of that need dredging in the future? Are we having any issues with any of the other sections of that canal, or is it just because we need the remediation of this area? And
yeah, so for this particular grant program, as it's a brownfield grant program, and that's our only brownfield in town, this funding source is only eligible for that proposed program of dredging. But again, I guess I wouldn't be able to say for sure if there's other areas that would be likely candidates for dredging. Some of the last areas that I know we've done not on the canal, there was a Mixville project not that long ago, and other areas where dredging has been utilized. The town doesn't sand the roads anymore. That used to be a major contributor to the need to dredge some of the ponds we have in some of our water courses. So now that we salt, that piece is less. But with some of the high volume of water we've seen in some of the rainstorms, certainly in the last year, and really 2 or 3 years back, there's a lot of water plus silt and sediment being conveyed across into waterways. So we certainly continue to monitor them, and we have a few culvert projects, and Cheshire Street comes to mind as an area, again, not on the canal, but that we're taking a hard look at some of the backups we've had there, and I think some of those are impacted by silt and sediment with time. So not necessarily dredging, but they're all part of the same process of maintaining our infrastructure.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Which brings us to item H, which is the adoption of new section 16.6 fats, oils, and grease fog management ordinance. Ms. Allard.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 091024-8. Be it resolved that pursuant to the recommendation of the Ordinance Review Committee, the Town Council hereby adopts a new section 16-6 fats, oil, and grease, known as fog management ordinance, as follows. This ordinance shall go into effect 21 days after publication.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Veliber was first. And if I could impose on Mr. Milano and Mr. Clement to cut through the fog for us. Oh, I got a million of them.
See what you did there.
Like deja vu.
Yes.
So, Mayor Kemet, Town Engineer, and Dave Milano, Superintendent. Obviously, we're here to implement the ordinance, to have fog, mainly for the reason of having a conduit for enforcement of that. I think we all know what the fog is at this point and what we're trying to deal with. I do want to share with you, or I'll have Dave do that, some correspondence or discussions he had with Chesprocott recently, which relates to the fog program.
Yeah, I had a meeting with Chesprocott, and we went over the fog program, and they are ready to help facilitate and, you know, help us with the inspections since they're already in there anyway. So they said if we just get this in front of them, we can have a meeting and have some bullet points that they could actually check during their normal health inspections, that they're willing to do that for us. So they are going to help us with this. And then if they see anything that sticks out, any violations, they will contact me, and then I'll go do a visit. And
So it'll be kind of a joint effort where while they're doing their routine inspections, they would notify you if they're seeing something that would indicate that the disposal of fats, oils, and grease is not being done properly, and making sure that doesn't get into our system then.
Correct.
Or if the grease trap units are unplugged or there's some evidence of something, they'll notify us and document it as well.
yes.
And this is a complete 180 from what we were told from the prior director. So this is great news.
Mr. Walsh?
So will we be charging the $300 then if they're going to, because our businesses already are getting charged by Chesprocott for inspections, and I would hate to have to charge them an additional $300 if Chesprocott's doing what you just said they're going to be doing. I mean, and if there is an issue, I mean, from what my understanding is from years back, that was always the case, that they would be inspecting it, and if there was a problem, then they'd turn it over to you guys to, if it wasn't cleaned up. But now it sounds like they're going back to that.
That's part of it, yes. We're still going to be doing spot inspections.
So you're still going to be doing spot inspections, and will you just charge the businesses that you do the spot inspections on, or do all restaurants or whoever have these grease traps get charged a flat rate of $300, whether you do a spot inspection or not?
They all will be charged that. That is part of the ordinance.
How did you come up with that fee?
That fee was, we did a lot of research on different towns and what they charge.
Yeah, because I did the same, at least online, and maybe I'm off, but most of them were under 300, or like 100, 150, 75, 50. I didn't see too many that were, or any actually, that were up in the $300 range, and I just wasn't sure, where that number is coming from, and I just hate to put an additional cost on our businesses when they're already being charged to be inspected by one group, and now we're going to charge them an additional $300, which is a lot more than what they're getting charged by Chesprocott for their inspections. I get it, because, hey, we got the best WPCA guy going out there to look at this stuff, but...
You still have to look at it. It's going to be two different inspections. Chesprocott is just helping us facilitate with ours.
So is your plan to inspect every...
Yeah.
So you're going to continue, and how much workload is that putting on you as the director, and does that mean we're going to have to hire an additional person to do that?
That's why we need the help from Chesprocott to help with this.
How many, do you know how many there are in town?
I believe it was 79 Class 3 and Class 4 food service establishments.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I get why you're doing it, because I know we've had issues in the past.
Yeah.
But if, you know, Chespercott is doing it and they see an issue, I mean, they're, some of these places they inspect 3 times a year or something, or, I mean, most of them are once a year, once or twice a year, but the bigger ones they're inspecting more frequently. I would think that they would catch those. But, you know, to charge these businesses an additional $300 is just, I just think, you know, and compared to what I've seen other towns charging, it sounds like a lot to me. That's,
Other questions? Ms. Allard?
I agree with you, Mr. Walsh, that we need to be careful with respect to, you know, charges that we're imposing on businesses. It's my understanding, though, that the $300 charge and also that the you know, help that you're going to be getting from Chespercott is not necessarily that they are doing the inspection. They are just going to be looking out for somebody that might need the inspection more immediately than what you would be doing automatically. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it is definitely a separate inspection.
Yes.
Okay, and is there any way, have you quantified at all how much expense that has been imposed on the town at large for potentially like blockages and broken pipes and violations of these regulations that these businesses really truly do already know they should be following, but potentially are not?
I can guesstimate just off overtime with blocked pumps and sewer backups, and it's definitely far over the fee they're paying. I know that. Just based on, you need 3 operators alone to do a blockage. It's all on overtime if it's after 3:30. Most of the pump station calls are always a block pump with fats, oils, greases, rags.
We also hired police officers.
Depending on where in the road it is, you do need to have detail work to even jet it, because sometimes it's under a light. And then we carry a $25,000 operating budget line item just to clean the wet wells at all of our 10 pump stations, which are always loaded with fats, oils, and grease. So I'm hoping that if there is any offenders who are currently discharging the fog, it'll reduce the amount of fog in the wet wells, which will reduce the amount of cleanings we need. So.
Thank you for that. I'm also gonna ask, I guess, I'm assuming that for the $300 fee that these businesses are paying, that if they potentially were not quite so sure what these regulations are, although it's my understanding that they do already know what these regulations are, they should be following them. But if for some reason they're not so sure how to follow the requirements, that they can contact you to make sure that they are actually not violating those health standards and potentially causing costly repairs on the town.
Yes.
Is that true? Okay, thank you. And I just want to also thank you for bringing this to our attention, because I feel like this is definitely the appropriate step to take, that anybody who is in violation of these standards, they should be the ones to actually pay the penalty for it. And it really shouldn't be something that gets spread over the taxpayer at large. So I think that this is a really great measure. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate, I mean, nobody has been checking them for many years. That's the reason why we've had these issues. I think all along, WPCA thought Chespercott was checking them, and they weren't. And that's where the real issue stands. And now they said, oh, we'll check them now. So I think that's really where the issue is. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be checking them. Absolutely we should be checking them, because we need to save the money, and the last thing we want is to have to dig up a road and have to fix it. So I just want to make sure that's clear to me, to you, that I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying, you know, the cost that we're charging businesses to do something that we already have another agency who's checking it. Now, I would think if they're checking these things, they will know quickly. But I don't know, how often do you see checking these traps, the 79, twice a year, 3 times a year?
Probably quarterly.
So 4 times a year.
Yeah.
So you and is it going to be you, Dave, or?
Yeah, it would be me. I'll train, operators to do it as well. So
Do you have the time to do all that?
yeah, I can manage it.
Okay, I just worry about spreading your time too thin too, and I'm hoping you'll probably train somebody else to do some of that too, but, all right, thank you.
Mr. Velliver, and then I'll come back.
Just a quick question. Obviously, assuming, we go with the $300 and we charge this, is that fee who gets covered by the, is it only the 79 Class 3 and Class 4, or is it all businesses? I mean, who gets hit by the $300, charge? And is it only the Class 3 and Class 4? Or are there, obviously there's Class 1 and Class 2. Are they getting charged a fee, or only the 3 and 4s?
Just the 3 and the 4.
Those are the facilities who will have grease traps.
Okay, so only 3 and 4. So at this point, you're only looking at 79, let's say 80 businesses. It may grow, let's say, go to 90. Hopefully, because I assume for example, if the north end grows, probably there's going to be businesses that go in there, either in the business or on the pad sites, that are probably going to be Class 3 or Class 4. Because if they're basically anyone who's frying stuff really is covered by that. So that at least with some, the good news is it's only 300, or it's only 79 businesses at the point who's going to get charged, and so that's, at least that's good, and that's hopefully a manageable number for you and or anyone that you can do. Because especially, as I said, if you mentioned you're going to be doing them quarterly, that's that's a lot of inspections. That's if I can do math, that's 320 inspections a year, right? So somebody check that math. Make sure it's but so in theory, right? That's more than one a day if you contemplate the fact that you only had 5 days in a week and over the course of a year. So as long I understand the importance of this regulation, and as Don had mentioned, my concern with it too is this really should be Chesprocot's deal. This really should be their job. And the fact that they haven't been doing it and have dropped the ball on this really is something that is sort of disappointing. But that now that we have to pick up that that ball and run with it, and now charge businesses for something that in theory they're already getting charged for by Chesprocot. Unfortunately, I don't see them picking, being able to do that level of inspection, hopefully that you're going to be able to do, and that hopefully with the two of you together, will hopefully be able to cover that. As I said, it's just unfortunate that it's another charge that we have to tack on to our businesses to do something that, in theory, should already be covered. But we thank you for your willingness to take this on, and hopefully this will help protect our systems, and maybe if we can get everybody, in line with this may be something we're able to readdress at some point in time, and either lower that number or reduce sort of your role into it and get it back to where it belongs, which is with the health district. Thank you.
Just for clarification,
Yep.
Chesprocot is not going to be doing a full inspection. They're really going to be just our eyes and ears out there and notice us that there's a problem.
Right. No, I understand that, but I think Chesprocot should be doing that more, and not just basically saying, oh, by the way, you may want to go check out these people that we've already gone and seen and inspected, and then we're going to leave there and say, oh, by the way, you may want to go take a look at that, instead of us doing our job. So,
Mr. Jinks, and then Mr. Malone, and Ms. Allard, in that order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I recall, when we talked about this in ordinance, I think you said that the rates and the ordinance itself largely came from, was it the MDC? Okay, which is a pretty large, how many towns is that a part of, do you know? It's like dozens, right?
Yeah, it's a lot.
So the $300 rate came from, which so means a lot of towns are paying that. That's what a lot of businesses in town, so it's not unusual necessarily. Okay, I remember we talked about that in ordinance.
Could I get a copy of that?
And I know that Chesprocot is a popular punching bag around here. When we talked about this in ordinance, our town attorney said that some towns the town does it, in some towns the health district does it. So it's not a situation where the health district is supposed to do it necessarily. Some health districts do and some don't. I don't know why previously they didn't. It makes makes some sense to me that with, the health district is concerned with what's happening inside the kitchen, inside the building versus what's happening outside once it gets to the sewer. Makes some sense that there's some division there, but it's a good thing that we've come to where we are now, where, you guys are working together and going forward, that'll hopefully help solve the problem to whatever extent we have a problem.
Mr. Mylone.
Thanks, Peter. So I agree with you, Jim. I think it's a good thing that you're working together, but I'm confused, and I want to make sure. This is an ordinance that we've taken on the responsibility for doing this. That's what I understood, because it wasn't getting done. And whether it was a misunderstanding, whether it was supposed to be that way, I don't want to go back and revisit that. That's not helpful. What I want to understand, and we can't count on Chesprocott doing it for us, even though they've decided they want to be cooperative and they would identify, what I understand, identify something that might be requiring a more immediate inspection than you might have it scheduled because they see something that concerns them, so they're going to report it to you. So that's great. I think all agencies that are involved in health or whatever other related work or service should communicate and work together, and that's all great. But to be clear, you have the time to do all these inspections quarterly on a regular basis? Because, look at I don't know how many you can get done in a day, but this is weeks of work, in my opinion, just looking at it, unless you're going to get 8, 9 done in a day. It seems to me that just getting from place to place, the most you can get done in a day is maybe 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. Multiply that out, adding 20 more facilities, because you're right, the North End is probably going to have 10 alone with new restaurants and other facilities up there. Is it practical that we're going to be able to do this without adding staff? I'm just making sure that we're just clear on it, so we're not here at a budget committee saying we had to add staff, because I think it's not necessarily, it's important work, but it's time consuming. So
Yeah, but we have a staff of like 10 also at the plant that I plan on training each and every operator what to look for, put together a little inspection sheet, and they're going to actually get trained to do it too. So it's going to be divvied out. It's not going to be just me. We're all going to be doing it.
And so when we charge our businesses that are responsible for this $300, they will see us showing up quarterly. So they're getting something for the money. We're not just charging them and not showing up. Okay.
Yes.
I'm satisfied. I just wanted to make sure we're all aligned. Thank you.
Ms. Allard.
I just feel like all of this discussion really emphasizes the need for the $300 fee. This is definitely going to be eating up the resources for, typically you have a full day's work already, and so I think that this falls on the appropriate party. So thank you again.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 8-1. Mr. Walsh has voted against it.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Brings us to the town manager's report. Mr. Kimball.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can probably flip to page 2 because I already gave the Bartlam Park South update. Just a reminder, this weekend is the Cheshire Fall Festival, beginning with Friday night, food trucks, music, and the Kiwanis Carnival returning this year. Also Saturday the 14th for the full Fall Festival, and Carnival and fireworks in the evening. More information can be found at CheshireFestival.com. And again, as I said earlier, but due to the ongoing construction, parking will be very limited, and visitors should expect to park at Cheshire High School and cross there at the traffic light. And visitors are also encouraged to consider carpooling, ride-sharing, biking, and walking to the event. Some updates on paving around town. State DOT just informed us last week that as you previously recall, they were anticipating milling and paving in early to mid-August. Which has obviously not happened with Route 10 yet, but they've told us that they were planning to start as early as this week. We've certainly made sure that they were aware of Fall Festival this weekend, so they don't begin milling in front of the high school and Bartlam Park in the next couple of days. So we're optimistic that they have been receptive to that information that we've been conveying, or at a minimum start at the North End or on Waterbury Road. The following local roads listed below in the table are scheduled to be chip sealed this season, which will begin as early as tomorrow, Wednesday, September 11th. So you'll see the list there of roads being chip sealed and those that are being double chip sealed. Turning the page, just a few other updates. The Brass City Harvest Mobile Farmers Market at the Senior Center. This will be both Monday, September 16th and Wednesday, October 9th from 12 to 1 p.m. These markets are open to all. Cash, credit, SNAP, EBT payments, all accepted. Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program debit cards will also be accepted for fruit, vegetables, eggs, and honey. CT grown produce will vary based on the season and may include lettuce, leafy greens, cucumbers, peppers, eggplant, beets, tomatoes, peaches, nectarines, apples, pears, and more. Also CT dairy products, CT made jams, farm fresh Connecticut meat, along with many other items. So more information at brasscityharvestwaterbury.com. But again, that'll be at the Cheshire Senior Center on both September 16th and October 9th. Some updates, and you'll see around the room, there's been some slight renovations beginning earlier this week, but the PEGPESHA grant funding that the council approved our application for upgrades to the audiovisual and broadcast capabilities for this room begins tomorrow with the installation of the 4 new displays for this room and also a control at the podium there for an easy connect for folks displaying both for council meetings, planning and zoning meetings, Board of Education meetings, anyone using the room. As we said earlier when we proposed this project, kind of getting us away from the sort of double-sided screen that we've used in the past, but also the ability for the content to be streamed directly to the feed that Mike Salamini has in the back, going to YouTube or Channel 14 for folks to see, say, a PowerPoint or a presentation more directly as opposed to a camera viewing a projector screen. So much easier for folks at home to follow along. So we're excited for that project to begin. And again, just for folks here in the room, you'll have 2 large displays, 75-inch displays. You can see the 2 blue lines there on that wall and this wall. Those are kind of more directed for the folks here at the dais, the council in this case. And then above where the old TV used to be, where you see that new outlet installed under the blue line there, and also mirrored over here. Those will be large 75-inch TVs that are up at the ceiling and angled out towards the audience and tilted so that they're kind of good viewing for folks on both sides of the room in the audience. So I think it'll make all of our meetings, both council meetings as well as, again, Planning and Zoning, Board of Ed, and many others, much easier and I think more conducive to presentations and conversation. So excited for that project to begin. And thank you to Noel for helping shepherd that project through. Finally, I know, I just came up with that. Finally, we have the electronics and mattress recycling event this coming Saturday from 9 to 1. This is our monthly electronics and mattress recycling event. And this program has been really successful, and I think residents really appreciate having these regular collections on a monthly basis. So please spread the word that that's available this coming Saturday. Another reminder on our projects around town page, which we always like to promote. And then finally, I added some summaries I received from the library director on the back page. Just an incredibly successful year by the Cheshire Library. Summer reading program was a 123% increase in participation. 1,449 registered. I won't read through all of the stats, but they really did a fantastic job this year. An 8-week program. At the end, everyone who finished the program, young and old, received a golden ticket for them and a guest to attend a reward party at the library in the evening on Friday, August 16th. Pop's Pizza provided 70 pizzas because they had 343 attendees. An incredible hula hoop performer and scavenger hunt, and just an amazing end to the summer and a very, very successful summer reading program. And all of the money for that whole program came from the Friends of the Cheshire Library. So just a really fantastic program, and thank you to the Friends for their support. Anyway, just really off-the-chart numbers that I just really wanted to share with you when I received them during our staff meeting. And you'll see a few other notes there in terms of foot traffic, which is up 49% this summer. Fall programs are being planned, and also there'll be a library booth at the Fall Festival. They've added American Sign Language module to their Mango Languages database, and again, their technology staff are working through initiatives that they're incorporated through the PEGPESHA grant also for ADA accessible public computer stations. So just kudos to our library. We have, I would submit, the best library in the state of Connecticut, and very, very proud of them. And a few upcoming council meetings, September, that should say 30th, that is a typo, apologies. Monday, September 30th at 7 p.m. is the joint town council and Board of Education meeting, and then our next regular meeting on October 8th. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions? Mr. Mylone?
I just had one question for Sean. Probably should know this, but I don't. The electronics, what do they do with the electronics? Do they recycle any of it? If you brought them a halfway decent TV, would someone use it, or does everything just get discarded?
Great question. I don't know for sure, but I don't believe it's sort of purposed or sold off or anything. I think it's the scrap parts within the components.
There's precious metal in some of those parts,
Yeah.
so that's where
So I think that's where everything goes. I don't think it's necessarily for functioning items that are intended to be reused. I think everything just gets kind of scrapped, but if I'm wrong about that, I'll let you know.
Someone in need, that's not the place to do it.
That's not the place to do it, yeah.
All right.
It won't find somebody to help you, help.
Thank you.
Just along that lines, the RWA, they have their recycling thing down in New Haven, but they also do satellites around, and we haven't had one here in some time. And is there a way that we can get on that list somehow, or so that people in Cheshire don't have to travel to New Haven maybe once or twice a year?
Yeah, we've had those conversations before, and I'll certainly revisit that with the folks from the RWA, and I'll see where they are in the queue in terms of scheduling future satellite locations, and see if we can get Cheshire in. I think you have to commit to, I got to confirm, there's something about the location and maybe some staffing to help support it, which I think, we would support if the council's okay with us having some public works staff there to help. It's certainly a great benefit, to your point, for folks not having to drive to Long Wharf. So I'll revisit that. It's a good suggestion.
Just on that, I mean, I noticed we've had, usually the electronics and mattress cycles usually either quarterly or semi-annually, but it seems to be more, of them. Is that correct, that there's been more of these? Yeah, okay, right. So
Yeah,
we're having it on a monthly basis?
On a monthly basis. So we funded through the budget, and I think through conversations with the Sustainability Committee, monthly collections at the transfer station. And the idea being, now that we do it monthly, we don't have to worry as much about traffic backup. When we would do these maybe twice a year, like the infamous one at Darcy School, backed up traffic for a mile or something because it was coming right out of COVID and everybody had a whole lot of stuff to drop off. And now that it's monthly, the traffic has been very manageable. We have a great route that kind of flows through the old transfer station path around the building and back out, and it's worked really, really well. And I think the committee's also discussing, whether to have some additional drop-off possibilities in the future, any number of things that can be recycled or disposed of that could be there on site as we this is probably what would this be? I guess 4th or 5th one that we've done. I think we started in April.
I think this is going to be, because obviously, you're right. I mean, some of them, when they have on a limited basis, people like, okay, I need to get rid of it now. So this is great. I just wanted to make sure that, so that for the people who are actually watching at home, right, that this is a new system where it's not just like, there will be a regular system as opposed to, hey, keep an eye out, we're going to announce one at some point in time, but, now people can understand it's coming once a month, and so they don't have to necessarily stock it up in the garage or in the basement and hope there's going to be one coming. So I think this is a good move on the part of the council, and thank you very much for implementing that and getting that done, because I think that's going to be helpful for a lot of residents. So thank you.
Thank you, and we appreciate folks spreading the word on that too, because I think we hear that question a lot. I think the more we can spread the word, the better.
Yeah, the Sustainability Committee, we collectively decided that monthly made more sense, and it's been well attended. So as Sean has said, it's kind of dispersed the traffic, so we don't have to deal with those clogs of traffic here at Town Hall. And we would like to expand some of the services. So we were looking at redeemables. We've been talking with some different groups, textiles, because we don't really have a place for textiles. So we've been looking at some other options in terms of recyclable.
White goods, is that in like refrigerators, other things, or is that something that's
not bulky right now?
Okay.
So yeah.
Anyone else questions for Mr. Kimball? Seeing none, no question, but a comment. Just thanks to Pop's Pizza. for their support of the library summer reading program. They once again proved themselves to be a great community partner, and we thank them for their support of this program. Moving on to reports of committees of the council. Chairman's report, starting to my left, Ms. Kramer.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Wolf?
Nothing to report.
Ms. Allard?
Well, we just passed the ordinance review that we met on, so other than that, there is nothing to report.
Mr. Jenks?
We'll begin budget meetings in 4 months or so.
Please. I don't want to think about that yet. And Ms. Pearson?
No report.
Moving on, no miscellaneous. Moving on to appointments. A, liaison reports, again, starting to my left, Ms. Kramer.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Wolf?
Nope, nothing to report.
Ms. Allard?
Nothing here either, nothing to report.
Mr. Jenks? Ms. Pearson?
Energy Commission did not meet, but Parks and Rec did. They rounded up or ended their Bartlett Beach series. It was very, very successful. The couple that was actually engaged at the last Bartlett Beach concert actually showed up at Parks and Rec to thank Parks and Rec and the community for hosting these concerts and providing this opportunity. They said they go to all the concerts. They loved it. It was a special time and place, and so it was very nice to have them there at the Parks and Rec meeting this last week. Other things discussed were just concerns about the trails, e-bikes, trail safety. So we did talk a little bit about, I talked about the police department. It is difficult to have patrols right now because we are understaffed. It's not just a Cheshire issue. It is a Connecticut, it's a national issue. But that is one way we can begin to address safety on the trails. We also talked about working with the Farmington Canal Rail to Trail Group. I've already reached out to Lisa Fernandez and Doug Noble, and I'm still waiting to hear back to see if they might assist us in any way. I think that was basically all that we discussed.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes, the always busy Town Beautification Committee met, and we had, I used to think Mr. Jenks was making up all these things when he was recording them, but I can't believe that these people are very busy. The King Road planting plan at the corner there is getting ready to move forward. They're going to remove the brush and everything that's there and plant some lower plants and things, and maybe a bench to give better visibility over there. The street tree planting that they're doing down in the south end, like where Cheshire Wine and Spirits are, where the Cunningham building is, those trees should be planted by October sometime. They also are working on the senior center landscaping, and they did pass a preferred planting list, but basically what they're doing is they're following along what the University of Connecticut has as they have in existence the UConn's Native Plant and Sustainable Landscaping Guide. So they're not reinventing the wheel. They're going to just basically follow that along, and there's also another guide, native perennial tree and shrub availability list. And they're going to recommend, that it does not include any plants with the invasive list. So they worked hard on that to make sure that it was done properly. And finally, thank you to Kurtz Farms for donating 150 mums that will be planted at the parklets and along Bartlam Park. They seem to do that every year, and it's quite generous. And hopefully, I don't know if they're going to be done. Are they going to be planted by the fall festival, or maybe not? They did? Oh. Yeah, I see. See,
They were doing St.
Look
Peter's
at that.
yesterday.
I knew they'd try to beautify that place before that. So yeah. So thank you to them as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Veldeber? Mr. Milone?
I'd just like to report the Retirement Commission met again, and it's just, it's very informative, excellent commission. Jim does a great job managing that work. The commission members are great, but the responsibility that our investment advisor and takes on, and the seriousness in which they look over these substantial funds that are there is impressive. So it's very informative for me, and it's great to really go to those meetings. I really appreciate it. So, and appreciate the work you do, Jim, and work our investment advisor does.
Thank you, Mr. Mylon. Appointments, Mr. Veliber, do you have any?
No.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes, sir, we have one. We would like to appoint Mr. Jim Jinks to Chespercott. This is a new appointment filling the vacancy of Michael Malone. The term of office is 9/10/24 to 9/1/26. Mr. Jinks is clearly a Democrat.
Mr. Veliber, would you like to second? Thank you. All those in favor?
Discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, I just have to say, I feel that there's a little bit of a conflict because Chespercott's board are the ones who set the fees for the towns. So I feel Mr. Jinks would have to probably recuse himself from those votes. And I'm not sure, we'd have to probably get the town attorney would he have to recuse himself from voting on anything that the town council would vote for Chespercott? I'm not sure, it's a little different when our town manager was on there because he wasn't a voting member of this council, but I would like to get some clarification as to I would prefer to have somebody who can fully vote on Chespercott's board and fully vote for the on the town council side too. So I don't know if you can give us any kind of response to that now, or if we can table this vote until we have it.
We can look into it. I'll consult with Jeff.
So, Mr. DiAgostino, would your recommendation be to do the appointment and pending your research on the subject, or?
Or table the vote for the next town council meeting while we look into it, if the town council wants to go that route.
I'll make a motion to table it.
Motion to table and a second is in place. Call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion to table fails. The original motion then is to appoint Mr. Jinks to the Chespercott board, and the town attorneys will look into it. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 6-3. Mr. Mylone, Mr. Veliber, and Mr. Walsh opposed. Brings us to the town attorney's report. Good segue. Mr. DiAgostino, do you have anything for us tonight?
No report.
And welcome, by the way.
Thank you
for being
and
here.
No report from the town attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Council communications, any letters to the council? Seeing none, no miscellaneous. Mr. Kimball, do we have pending litigation for?
We do. It should be relatively brief, but we have pending litigation for executive session to include Chief Drife, town attorney, myself, staff here. We don't need Jim for this one. Sorry, Jim.
So I'll accept a motion to move to executive session to include everyone in the room with the exception of Mr. Jascott. Sorry, Jim.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Second. All those in favor? Unanimous. We are in executive session. Thank you.